They're eating the dogs. They're eating the pets.
You talk about extreme. You and I both know what I'm talking about. Listen, Bret, let's just get to the point, okay? He is unfit to serve. People are exhausted. May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish.
They're eating the pets.
Why did Trump win the election? What are the linguistic differences between Harris and Trump? How do Trump and Harris's word choice and behavior influence how voters perceive them? These are the questions this video gives answers to. I analyze the language of influential people to find out what they say, what they really say. Welcome back to the channel.
I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
We've had a terrible economy. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
In debates and interviews, Trump speaks assertively and, more importantly, directly about political issues, particularly immigration. This means that even though there are legitimate objections to some of his statements, his message seems clear and consistent to many people. Clarity and consistency are key when it comes to how voters assess the reliability of politicians. Two counter questions that the opposing side would typically ask here are: is this happening in large numbers? Does he have percentages to back up these claims? These would be objections for Harris to make once Trump is done talking.
And also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast.
The examples Trump mentions, Ohio and Colorado, are called synecdoches, small parts of a problem that are used to represent the whole. Politics is full of synecdoches like, see, the employment rate is bad because this car company can't afford to hire. Or schools are doing great because the teachers at this school are great. And so on. Trump uses synecdoches to justify his immigration policies.
Or to remove record numbers of illegal aliens, but we're going to have it do really well very soon, and we're shipping all these people back where they came from. And now, before I sign the Laken-Riley Act into law, I would like to ask Laken's really incredible mother, who I've gotten to know. If you could come up, Allison, and say a few words, that would be great. Thank you very much.
We also want to thank President Trump for the promises he made to us. He said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken. And he hasn't. He's a man of his word. We trust that he will fight for the American people. Thank you.
Thank you.
The emotional impact of this particular tragic synecdoche is likely to be greater because Trump lets the victim's mother be part of it. The victim's mother helps to complete the synecdoche, so to speak. Ultimately, politics is about branding, so when the mother says that Trump's a man of his word, it's understood that he's not just a man of his word in this case, but in all cases, allegedly. The most typical criticism of synecdoches is that they aren't necessarily objective. That just because someone's able to mention one thing that's good, bad, or tragic, it doesn't mean that a given policy is good or should be changed. It's always possible to find a good, bad, or tragic case, no matter what the political issue is. Whether voters will agree with a given synecdoche, therefore often depends on their political stance. Thus, the opposing side would say that these examples, these synecdoches, can be used as proof that the entire country is being destroyed, that Trump's fear appeal isn't substantiated. They'd also say that Trump's diverting attention from the topic at hand, going from a conversation about middle-class families and inflation to now immigration. These would be objections for Harris to make once Trump's done talking. And why would Trump make this about immigration? Because voters consider immigration to be one of the most urgent issues. And why is it urgent? People who support Trump's immigration policies would simply say that it is urgent and that you need to deal with urgent issues. Critics, on the other hand, would say that Trump and other like-minded politicians have made it urgent via fear-appealing tactics.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
With this, it's obviously sensitive to the moderator to underline that he thinks that the topic at hand, economy, and what Trump just said are two different things, which signals to the viewers that they should think of it as two different things as well. The moderator criticizes Trump, and this isn't the only time. Watch this.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. We'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
In political debates and interviews, questions matter very little, unfortunately. Trump was asked about a particular bill that he didn't support. Instead of answering the question, Trump does what most politicians do. He starts attacking his opponent rhetorically. This diversion tactic is so common that it's become one of the 4 pillars of political rhetoric, the 3 others being positive personal details, presenting policies, preferably being as generic or vague as possible, and showing that you're in sync with the values and wishes of ordinary people. However, many voters don't pay attention to the questions or whether or not their candidate is being properly responsive to the issues they raise. They pay attention to their candidate's assertiveness and the clarity of their declarations of intent. Harris calls Trump's rhetoric extreme, and many people would agree with her. However, it's intentionally extreme, designed to portray her and Biden as enemies of the people. And what better way than using so-called pets as a synecdoche of how bad things supposedly are, in theory at least. Many people in our zeitgeist feel an emotional bond to their pets, so this is pathos to the nth degree, appealing to people's pity for the pets and anger towards the people who are letting it happen, including Harris. This particular use of pathos, however, can also be damaging to Trump, not only because it practically invites moderators to refute it, which the moderator does, but also because it can make Trump look unreflective and sensation-seeking. Trump's use of synecdoches goes like this. He makes a general claim.
And look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk.
And then mentions an alleged specific example.
In Springfield.
However, this use of synecdoches opens for objections like, do 2 examples of towns equate to a lot of towns? And even if this is an actual problem in Springfield, contrary to what the moderator says, is it an actual problem for America? Trump knows how to make headlines. He knows how to draw attention to himself. As a businessman, he knows that making money is about staying relevant, being in the news. He uses the same strategy in politics, and many people take note of that. Politics is not about let the best argument win. It's about what most people at a given time in a given zeitgeist want to hear. Oftentimes, people aren't concerned with the logic behind a given argument. Rather, they pay attention to the essence of it. and if it aligns with their worldview and opinions, they like it. If it doesn't, they don't like it. People evaluate the directness of the politician, and in that regard, Trump speaks in a plain, easy to understand, matter-of-fact tone. In that sense, he doesn't talk like most politicians. He still uses diversion tactics and rehearsed phrases, but it's the lack of political correctness that separates his rhetoric from the rhetoric of many other politicians. Looking at it critically, though, assertiveness and charisma are merely part of a politician's shell. Logically, such qualities, in case they are always qualities, have no bearing on what's true and what isn't. Unlike Trump, Harris never found the right tone to address people. She spoke like a typical politician, with rehearsed, politically correct platitudes and cliches that, as a result, ended up sounding contrived, as if she didn't actually mean what she said. To name one of many examples, notice the following discrepancy between question and answer.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. The aspirations, the goals, the ambitions of the American people.
Nevertheless, the moderator doesn't point out that Harris's rehearsed narrative deviates from his question.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
When talking about the same subject, immigration, Harris prioritizes self-protective diversion tactics over direct, easy-to-understand assertions. So what's the difference between how Harris and Trump engage in diversion tactics? The difference is that Harris doesn't convincingly set a new agenda in the given discussion. Even though Trump didn't answer the moderator's question about the specific bill, he still managed to make the conversation about pets and the alleged incompetency of Biden and Harris. In the following, notice the discrepancy between the question and Harris's generic, evasive answer.
How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
right
do you,
now,
just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Bret, let's just get to the point, okay?
Actually, Baier had made a point that Harris intentionally diverts attention from. And how did she do that? She starts by saying the issue of immigration, already generalizing Baier's specific question for self-benefit, because by generalizing the issue, Harris can go into speech mode and speak in general and preferably vague terms, one of the pillars of political communication. Then she says she agrees with Baier that it's a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have, a formulation so unnecessary and hyper-correct that it sounds like stalling, even though Baier didn't say that.
And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but
this is the utterance that reveals that what preceded it was indeed stalling. Harris is supposed to answer the specific question, but because she knows that the answer would make her look bad, she deflects.
Just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Bret, let's just get to the point, okay? The point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
I'm not finished. We have an
it's a rough estimate of 6 million people have been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question, I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And
the problem here is that it's pretty obvious that she wasn't beginning to answer. It sounds a lot more like she was beginning to introduce a focus shift, which is a diversion tactic. Talking about repairing a supposed broken immigration system is irrelevant to Baier's specific question. Next, Harris's stalling should be noted. Notice her repetitions and the acts and policies she mentions, even though these acts and policies have nothing to do with Baier's question and the topic at hand.
When you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the Chips and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the elite. Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish.
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
I'm
and they
in the
didn't bring
middle
up
of
that bill.
responding to the point you're raising,
Okay.
and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath.
Yes, she mentioned that 10 seconds ago.
Within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill.
So whenever Harris prioritizes stalling over answering directly, viewers can be sure that she finds the question sensitive.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish.
Actually, Baier doesn't have to let Harris finish. It depends on what she was about to finish. And since Bayer's already identified the act Harris uses for diversion, there's nothing to finish.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
Fake outrage is a diversion tactic, and politicians use it to make themselves look like victims of unfair interviewers, even though that's often far from the truth.
And I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
In her answer, which isn't a real answer, Harris keeps talking about the bill that Trump didn't support, a far cry from Bayer's question.
It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President,
Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
6 Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it.
At this point, Harris has had nearly 2 minutes to answer, yet she still orders Baier to let her finish. And what is it that she's finishing? A scenario. What this bill would have meant hypothetically. So even as a diversion tactic, this isn't a proper answer, because she doesn't mention actual results. Harris is so preoccupied with attacking her opponent rhetorically, a diversion tactic and one of the pillars of political communication, that she doesn't give specific answers to specific issues that are important to voters. She's busier protecting herself. Voters take note of that. Harris's hyper-focus on this pillar unintentionally leads to contradictions. Let's watch.
Bret,
more than 70% of people tell the country is on the wrong track. They say the country is on the wrong track. If it's on the wrong track, that track follows 3.5 years of you being vice president and President Biden being president. That is what they're saying, 79% of them. Why are they saying that? If you're turning the page, you've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam Vice President.
You and I both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become. But listen.
As Sarah struggles to come up with something, anything, she uses intonation to suggest that it's strange she even has to say it. However, this condescending or slightly condescending intonation falls flat when what she says is completely out of context.
Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Even Harris herself doesn't seem to know what she's talking about, as indicated by her pauses, self-corrections, and restarts.
People have become. But listen.
Unintentionally, this shows that Harris is easily thrown off balance.
One, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous, and that people are exhausted with someone who professes to be a leader who spends full time demeaning and engaging in personal grievances and it being about him instead of the American people. People are tired of that.
Yes, because Harris would never make interviews about her and not the American people. It's ironic that Harris talks about people being exhausted from someone who demeans and engages in personal grievances, while she's literally demeaning and engaging in personal grievances.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
If Harris is about putting the American people first, it's contradictory that she engages in evasion and diversion and doesn't give direct answers that the American people can use. Here, for example, instead of addressing people's concerns, she deflects by attacking her opponent. Trump is direct, Harris is indirect. Trump doesn't sound like a typical politician. Harris does. Many people like directness. Trump's direct rhetoric can be interpreted as generalizing and too harsh. Harris's rhetoric can be interpreted as unspecific and too vague. Many people like politicians who are or manage to give people the impression that they're solution-oriented, even harsh at times. Trump and Harris both have a tendency to brag, which isn't a good quality, but is common in all forms of advertising. They both have a tendency to divert attention from inconvenient questions. It's a good thing to have a critical press, no matter who's president, as long as the criticism is logical, fair, and balanced. The problem in getting logical, fair, and balanced criticism, though, is that the largest media companies have biases that are painfully obvious. Like and subscribe for more videos. Until next time.